One of the reasons that I've been holding these Real Theology Sundays for quite a while is that the lessons we learn here have to help us with problems we encounter in our everyday lives. In these days, when it takes so very little to get people upset and in a rage, it's really important that we carry with us the tools to talk to people in our daily lives about hard things. Yeah, there's no shortage of them. Yeah, controversial things like COVID-19 and wearing masks or being vaccinated or not. Or the acceptance of LGBTQ people who finally found their voice in daily life. The banning of books in some communities, and who gets to choose to ban. Hot button topics like guns and gun ownership. Whether or not the United States was founded as a Christian country. What exactly does it mean to be a Christian? Could have fooled me sometimes this week. And how does a Christian really act? The explosive topics like abortion and a woman's right to control her body, and who was responsible for January 6th. And of course, the upcoming elections. Regardless of where you stand on the candidates, when things get discussed in the wrong way, unless you're careful, somebody's going to get hurt. It's like running with scissors. And here we are careening headlong into the time of the year when we have the biggest possibility of confrontation with someone who doesn't think or act like we do. But that's why we chose to make today a Real Theology Sunday. Right here in this congregation, we have people who lean all different ways on these issues, and that's fine. That's the beauty of being a Congregationalist. We can be liberal or conservative on issues and very different politically from one another, but we share one thing in common, a belief in progressive Christianity, which means that Jesus welcomed all people, was respectful to all people, wherever they are in their life's journey. And we too are welcoming everyone here, everyone, with respect and love. So how do we navigate these weeks ahead in a way that's respectful but also affirms our beliefs? We need to look no further than today's short gospel I just read to see the kind of person we might be coming in contact with in the weeks ahead. The funny thing is, this story I just read is nearly 2,000 years old. But you see, people have not changed much since then. Back then, they were judgmental about others and had an overblown sense of their own importance. They liked to be seen in public for what I'd call these days a good photo op, where they're putting money in the collection plate and praying in the temple. On the other hand, we learn that God sees and hears our real selves, and recognizes the one man who is humble, who instead of dwelling on what's wrong with the other guy, knows all too well his own shortcomings and asks for forgiveness. It hasn't changed. How do we enter into this time of emotionally charged encounters with others? This morning, I'm so pleased to have Kate Conetta with us, who is in her life as a community activist and organizer, often finds herself discussing politically, emotionally, and morally charged issues. During our second hour, she's going to be leading us into some more in-depth conversations on these things and how you deal respectfully when you're in dialogue. And you know that the potential exists during the elections and at at your own dinner table at Thanksgiving and Christmas to be in this kind of position. I've invited Kate to give us an overview of what she's going to do with us over coffee this afternoon. So let's welcome Kate to the podium.
Reverend Kriss, thank you so much for inviting me to participate today. I'm really honored to have the opportunity to speak with everybody. So good morning to you all, and thank you for coming together this morning in the spirit of community. Reverend Kriss just brought forward some very important questions. What does it mean to come to the table and communicate with others about complex situations that can be very personal and life-determining in some cases? How do we find common ground when we come from different perspectives? And why is it important for us to do these things? That last question is really at the root of what communication is all about. What's our goal in communicating with each other? There are a lot of reasons we choose to communicate. Maybe we're trying to share information. Maybe we're trying to build a relationship with someone. Sometimes it's just a form of self-expression. Or we do it as a sign of respect, as a form of social etiquette. Whatever it is, that reason is underscored by one thing, and that's the desire to connect with other people. And that is something that I think is so important to acknowledge every time we have a conversation. We are trying to communicate out of a desire to connect with other people. So what makes some conversations more difficult than others? We might engage in conversation where the disagreement is a conflict of personal moral codes. Maybe that discussion makes us question our own beliefs about things. Maybe what we're talking about brings up painful memories or a trauma that we've experienced. Maybe it reminds us of an insecurity we feel about a relationship that we have. Sometimes our cultural divides are so great that we're using the same words, but they mean completely different things to each of us in that conversation. There, again, are all kinds of reasons, but they all have another thing in common. There are human emotions attached to them. This is part of being connected to other people. Sharing connections comes with feelings, and while they can be joyful sometimes, when we're in conflict, those feelings get complicated. Many of us easily access feelings like anger and frustration, but those deeper feelings, ones which require us to embrace our own vulnerabilities, are much harder. What is it like to hold conversation with someone where there is great disappointment either by you or the other person? What about a conversation where someone is struggling to respond respectfully, or even more commonly these days, comes from a place of strong defensiveness? The holidays come with a lot of expectation, and sometimes include the presence of people we might not normally choose to spend time with because of our difference in perspectives. And now those interactions that we have to some degree avoided are finally here and facing us. And we're left with decisions about how to handle those conversations. And not only that, we're left with the awareness that those interactions may not only impact the relationship we have with that person we are speaking with, but even extend to the relationships of other people with whom we are sharing the holidays. So I hope we can spend some time together after the service discussing specific ways to approach tough conversations. Some of the things we will talk about include setting expectations for respectful exchanges, such as laying a foundation through your own actions to encourage similar behavior from others. We'll talk about specific conversational skills that promote positive communication, such as active listening, self-awareness of body language, and what words not to use. I'll share some strategies to use when you're struggling in a tough conversation and not sure how to move forward, such as identifying common ground or redirecting the energy of the conversation. And I'll also share a few anecdotes that highlight what happens when people find ways to build bridges with their communication despite significant differences in opinion. Before I step back, I want to leave you with this thought. You can't control the way your message is received. You can only control the way that you deliver the message. You can't control how others think or how they behave. You can only ever control how you think and behave. And this is what having faith is about sometimes. That if you put the best version of yourself forward to build connections, that those connections will follow. Perhaps not on the timeline you expect, but they will follow. Have faith in yourself and in the other person. I thank you again for the opportunity to be here today and look forward to connecting with you after the service. Thank you.
I send you forth into a world you already know is hurting. And I send you forth with an invisible jar of the balm of Gilead in your hand. I send you forth to temper your conversations without losing sight of what you believe in. And I send you forth in love so that you can feel the presence of God every time you step forth from here and all week long. And that is the love of God in dialogue with one another. God bless you and keep you all this week. God keep you safe and confident and feeling God's presence every single moment. Amen.